Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of You Make Us, where we look and celebrate and, kind of get into the nitty gritties of how projects are built on Unlock and and how we can actually showcase the amazing builders of Unlock. So today we have our guest, Paul Brigner, who's going to be talking about a very interesting project about how we can facilitate and help communities. So over to you, Paul.
Well, hi there. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for featuring me on your event. And I'm a big fan of Unlock. I have been a community organizer in Washington, D.C. for a long time. And I've wanted to have a tool that would allow me to build a community that would allow me to do event registrations and NFTs for the events and just really making it more of a Web3 native type of experience where of course the events that I'm holding are about cryptocurrency. I've been doing a series of events for the past few years, so I wanted to actually use the tools. And in DC, it's kind of funny is that we talk a lot about crypto policy here and we try to move legislation and other things on the Hill, but when it comes to actually using the tools, a lot of us who are policy professionals don't use them all that much. And in fact, some of the people don't really have much of any exposure to Web3 when it comes down to having their own wallets and interacting with the chain directly. So I saw Unlock as an opportunity to leverage that native Web3 experience for event registrations. So I created a tool to do that. And this started, I think, about 8 or 9 months ago when I started building. So it was kind of early on in the vibe coding movement. And I used codex through the whole process. And, now, of course, I'm much more productive on that than I used to be given the development of those tools. But I can tell you more about it. I mean, I guess I should say my current role and what I do on an official basis, aside from developing these vibe coding side projects, is I am the Chief Policy and Regulatory Officer at Zodl. That's the Zcash Open Development Lab. We are the core developers of Zcash, and we develop the Zodl wallet, which is a Zcash specific wallet. It's really a great product. I hope you all give it a try. It's pretty exciting. I love to talk about that too, but today I'll focus on Unlock.
No, that's amazing. It's really interesting to see that you're in different perspectives, building in the same purpose. So, how was your own story? Like, how did it start? Like, where was the initiation, and that actually drove you towards Unlock?
Just holding meetings in DC for a number of years, I was constantly dealing with trying to find good tools for RSVPs and managing the member list and just trying to take advantage of the best tools I could for that weren't incredibly expensive. I was trying to
Yeah.
use things that I could afford based on just being a community organizer. And I eventually started using Luma for my meetings. So currently and in the past, most all of the RSVPs were handled through Luma, which is great. And there were some meetings that I actually charged for, and I work with some collaborators where we charge for meetings, and Luma is good for that, of course, if you're using Web2 payment rails. I didn't think that was actually true to what I was trying to accomplish with my advocacy and my focus on Web3 and crypto. So that just led me to do some searching on like what are the tools out there where I could do this in a more Web3 native way. And that's where I just found Unlock and started using it for my meetings. And I have to say, what I am going to show today and what I'm talking about is something that I had worked on again for 8 or 9 months or so, and I had intended to move it more into production for my meetings. I never quite got there, and there's a reason for that. In that earlier this year, our company transitioned, and we used to be known as Electric Coin Company. Now we're known as Zodl. My role changed a little bit. I had to really lean into some things for work, and I actually could not continue my meeting schedule. I was doing meetings every month, so this year I've paused, and I have paused also on implementing the tool. But the tool is mostly built, so it's completely open source and free for anyone to try to build on. So my hope is that I can share what I've built, and maybe someone would see some potential there to build on it or copy it, or just take it
Yeah.
from where I started.
Yeah. No, and I think that's great because you're building something which has real life gaps and challenges, which if you could add some more. And also it is something that has a process. So you found a need where in this product market, and you're building towards that. I know that you've kind of elaborated about the process, the outcomes of the what you're building, but could you like talk about, like, since events, memberships, subscriptions, what are the key gaps and challenges that you've seen that communities face, or even let's say individual solo users?
Oh wow. Well, I just don't think there's a good tool out there that I've seen that provides just for a great community experience. So that's what led me to start building one. And also, one of the big issues for me is a tool where I can protect my users' privacy and ensure that all the data is stored in a way that I can ensure it's not abused and used for purposes it shouldn't be. And
Yeah.
you just don't find that really at all, I don't think, unless you do it yourself. And that's where I came to the conclusion that I really should just try to build something myself so that I can make sure that I have more control over the user experience, and I can ensure that everything looks the way I want it to. I can add features as I want, and also just ensure that like all that data that gets stored, which is pretty sensitive about what meetings you're going
Yeah.
to and your emails and other things, is and if you're paying as well, I just wanted to try to control that as much as possible so it didn't get in the wrong hands for my community. Because as working for Zcash, I'm very focused on privacy. That's kind of our core value that we work on. So I was trying to just carry all those things over into a community. And what might be helpful is I just show a couple things about what the community is about and what I was
Yeah.
doing, and then we go for there. So let
Yeah.
me see if I
And
can just
also maybe
show.
to
Yeah.
talk about that, the community and the product, is it related to access, identity, reputation, participation? So if you could actually talk about that, it could, give us like a larger idea.
Yeah. Well, sure. Let's do that. So here, this is just the PGP for crypto, pretty good policy for crypto
Yeah.
website, pgpforcrypto.org. And some of you might recognize the PGP acronym. It's kind of an homage to pretty good privacy, the PGP email encryption tool. So I used that and tweaked it a little bit. Because again, the focus of my meeting series is cryptocurrency, but privacy is a big part of it. So I wanted to throw that PGP in there. And so here, you could register for meetings, and as I mentioned, right now these are not actual meetings. I'm doing some testing on another project that I can mention in a minute. But here you can see what our mission is and what the project is about, and we do roundtables and events and other things. So these monthly meetings that I've held for 3 years, about over the past 3 years monthly, is really with the community that I was building. And for this, and it just was typically ticketing for a long time, right? And people could go to Luma and sign up and attend, but I wanted to take it further, and I wanted to say, okay, it would be nice if we could like actually build a community site where people could feel like they're a part of the community. So if you go to the member community beta there, it's going to take you to this community site. And this is what I've built. And maybe before I go there, I should just tell you that everything I'm showing here is on my GitHub at Paul Brigner /PGP community. and you can see all the technical details there. It's pretty sophisticated. I think this is probably way over engineered for currently I'm not even deployed, but the engineering level I put into is pretty high. I used to be a software developer, so maybe that
Oh,
explains that.
okay. That's why.
But so here, you can sign in, and it uses sign in with Ethereum. So I'm logging in with my wallet, and then it's going out to the chain to determine what memberships I have. It takes a minute because it has to go out and check the membership status. It's gonna pull that back in a second, and it's going to show that I'm a member. I'm a community member, which means that I'm a free member. So as I was doing this, I was hoping to have different tiers of membership. I wanted to have people who actually wanted to contribute and donate to the project. So I'll show you in a minute. We have different tiers of membership. I was thinking, you could have updates for members here and share news about upcoming events. Again, as I mentioned, I'm going to focus on past events because that's where I was doing most of this work last year. So here I just went to the past meetings, and these are all NFT events on Unlock that I had created. Like if I go over to Unlock and show you here's an example of one of the meetings that I created for the June event. And this is probably familiar to many people who have developed meetings with Unlock. So going back over here, you can see the June event and you can see the details. So I actually attended this meeting, and if you click this button, you can see the meetings that I missed. Of course, I organized these, so I attended them all, but this one is, I didn't register on the system here. So you can see a meeting that I missed. You can drill down into the meeting, going back to that June meeting. And I'm logged in as an administrator, so some of the things you might see here, like this metadata status was published. I'll get into that in a minute. But you can see the event details and all the things that happened in the event and the discussions that were held in the event, right? And then it shows links to the YouTube playlists and other things. For example, just to show you that real quick, here's one of the YouTube playlists, and all the YouTubes are available on this PGP for Crypto YouTube site at PGP for Crypto. All right. Okay. So just going back here briefly, so you can see the event, and that's kind of the experience I was going for. So, if you're a user, you can come in and it recognizes who you are, what tier level you are. You can register for upcoming meetings, and I don't have any to register for at the moment. You can look at your past meetings, see the ones you attended, select, the year, and see the stuff that, is part of this community. I can go a little further on this and that to show you some of the things that I built with this. Going into the edit profile, you can add some information about yourself, and you link a wallet. By the way, the wallet linking process is part of the sign up where it uses an email authentication, and then after you authenticate your email, you can link your wallet. You can go into the membership area to choose what membership you want and what tier you have. So I'm a community member. That's a free membership. If I wanted to change that, I can go to say, well, we have 3 different tiers: holder, staker, and builder. I'm going to be at the lowest tier, which is holder, and I can renew this because it's actually expired. I used to have that tier, of course. And it tells me that it's 10 cents, and it allows me to pre-approve, so I don't have to approve this every month as it renews. And I can continue here. I guess you're not seeing the signing of the wallet, but I'm signing a request from the Coinbase wallet that just popped up saying that I'm approving the pre-withdrawal, and just have to click that a couple times to let that go through and confirm one more time. So I confirmed the interaction with my browser extension wallet. It's confirming that checkout, and my membership checkout is completed. So all of this is doing direct interaction with the contracts, the Unlock contracts on the chain.
Yeah, that's something that, I also noticed that the kind of user experience is very straightforward. All of the data is quite, clear in what the user has to do, the decisions that they have to do, and also we can see that where unlock fits in. So I think this is a great product, especially like the first use case that you've pointed out in terms of, creating meetings, because this is something that, especially it's one of the most tedious things that we have to do. But especially, and if there are various tier levels, it also creates this whole creators aspect, and I'm guessing also for the user as well as the creator.
Yeah, this is very rough, though I have to say, and I didn't
Yeah.
actually get this to production like I wanted it to,
Yeah.
and I know that the UI could be refined a ton to make it much clearer and much
Mm,
easier for people to use. It's a little
mm,
over technical right now, in my opinion,
mm. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I think it's a good start. And one of the things you might have noticed is because I was focused on privacy so much, and as I was learning more and more about Unlock and the infrastructure that Unlock uses, I was realizing that there's a lot of metadata, there's the RSVP information, and there's actually a lot of data that's being stored in the Unlock infrastructure that's not on chain. And for me, it was important that I tried to not rely on any third party. As I mentioned earlier, I really wanted to take the whole membership experience and own it and not have to be reliant on any other third party service. And I didn't actually realize this when I first started Unlock, is that, there's all the metadata, the images, and other things that you have to store kind of in a more Web 2 way. You don't want to put everything on chain just because it wouldn't be efficient to do so. And Unlock provides all that infrastructure for you, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Um, but I actually decided I wanted to build it myself. So I kind of like recreated a lot of that. And you can see here that, I didn't use any of the typical checkouts. I basically built all of the functionality myself. And for the events, like, let me take you into the admin area here for a minute. Just give it a second to load. So, it loads the roster of members and it caches that. So you can see, and I've got obfuscation here on all the sensitive details. But so you'll see here I have the member roster, event data, membership data. If I go into event data, it loads all these events. So, actually I went in and I built all of this out. And if you needed to go in and change any of the data details of these events, you can do it here. You don't have to go to Unlock to do that. So really, for the Unlock interfaces directly, I was only using it to create the initial meetings. And taking you back over here to Unlock, for example, this is that June meeting. I actually went in and for this base token URI, I changed it to my own URL where I'm handling all that metadata. So again, I really had a vision of controlling the entire environment for this app, and making sure that I really owned all the data. And this is all running on Amazon AWS through the Amplify environment. It's kind of like Vercel for those who use that. And it's using DynamoDB on the back end. And it's again, the back end is pretty sophisticated, and you can read all about that on the GitHub if you want to.
Yeah. No, and I think this, what you brought up, that, Unlock also gives you the ability to, let's say, recreate or reposition your own, metadata or your own experience in the way that you want, also helps you build better. And especially now, like we've seen with a lot of, red tape around a lot of conversations around enterprise organizations, in different cases, even let's say the government, something like this, where they know that there is security within the, the app that they are using or the platform. I think there is a lot of, importance that is given on, let's say, trust and safety. Like I was just discussing this yesterday. I was chatting with somebody who is using OpenClaw, and I got a message on my WhatsApp saying that, okay, here is a number, you can actually, add, like, you can retype it and then you can get connected. And it was bizarre. I mean, like that, I
Hmm.
was like, absolutely not, right? So, and especially the whole idea of meetings, which leads to sharing conversations, even like, let's say we have a lot of other platforms that even share, there's a lot of data being recorded, and we don't
Yeah.
honestly, like, for, let's say, the user who has a very basic knowledge will not be looking at the outcome of every conversation or every meeting that's made, right? For natural purposes. So if we have a system that already pre thinks and supports this, the idea of, let's say, building safety, conversations through safety, it's great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I do think it's important. And I think now we're in this era where people can just build the things they
Yeah,
want to use. They're no longer required to use these third-party solutions, and it's amazing in that you can take something like an open source tool like Unlock. You have the blockchain to be able to execute on. You can just use the APIs and talk to your Claude Code or talk to your Codex and build this stuff relatively
yeah,
quickly. I mean, I actually put a lot of time into this, but again, I started 8 or 9 months ago, and this was, the tools weren't quite as sophisticated. I could probably do it a lot quicker and even better now
yeah,
if I would start fresh.
yeah,
But I do think there's like a kernel of a really good functionality here, maybe some ideas that people in the Unlock community could build on. I'm not so sure that I'm going to be able to continue this as the way I had envisioned, given my role change and the way my
yeah,
events are changing. But
yeah,
I hope somebody does carry it on and like really builds out a community tool like this that you can self-host and is relatively easy to get up and running and just has like a lot of features and functionality. I mean, Unlock really provides a lot of that for you already. I just wanted to take it even further. I wanted to take it to this level of like an out of the box community, membership tiers, event registration, NFTs, everything that was in my control.
yeah. And yeah, and I think those use cases are something that we've seen across, and especially when such use cases are also prone to, like, let's say, vulnerabilities or, limitations. I think, it's, how would something like this work with, I mean, like, could you explain, like, let's say if I've, created a meeting or an event, and, I don't want, let's say, some sort of hacking happen, how would that, like, what is the kind of ethos behind, what you've built that would stop, because we've seen that on Zoom, like people crashing in and, like sharing inappropriate videos and screens and writing
Yeah, yeah.
nonsense, right? Yeah,
Well, I think if you're hosting your own meetings and you have a small community or even a large community, I think that you're probably not going to be the target like Meta is or like Luma is or some other like large platform for event hosting. So that's probably a good thing. And that when people think about hackers, when the hackers think about what they're going to go after, what data they're going to go after, if you're not part of that larger group that is a big honeypot of data, then I think that's
yeah,
probably good. So, taking yourself out of those platforms is the first thing that's good. I do want to mention though that this has not been hardened for production use. I have run it through some things, and I know that there are some issues that I need to address on that. Of like I went through the
but
codex
in the
security.
scope of the future, in the
Yeah,
scope
but
of the
this
future,
could
we
this could
could, yeah,
absolutely be
yeah,
hardened. It wouldn't be that difficult to do that, and I think it would just give you, yes, I think it would give you a lot more assurance that your data is not going to get into the wrong hands or it's going to be hacked, just because you're separating yourself from these other honeypots, and you're kind of being in your little niche community. And hopefully this would over time, be really well hardened so that you would have that kind of confidence in it as well, even if somebody did try to hack it.
Yeah. And to look at a specific area of this, what is the role of the creator community that is going to be using it? Would they be the participants? Would they be the institutions? How, let's say, in the future, like how would you see it? How would you see the role of the creator grow through this? Because since it's driving community participation and engagement.
Yeah, so I didn't get that far with like actually defining what the different membership tiers
Mhm.
represent and what benefits they have and what kind of role the members would have. That's all very important. It's the kind of thing that I really wanted to get to, and to be able to allow members of this community to feel like they had a special role and they were contributing in a unique way. It could be, adding on the ability for these higher tier members to share information through the platform with others. Of course, if most of my events were free, but if you wanted to charge for events, a higher tier membership that had an ongoing contribution could get cheaper prices, discounts for
Yeah.
events, and other things that would be easy to implement. So, I didn't go down that path so far. I was really just kind of working on that infrastructure of what the basic capabilities were for the platform, and then I was hoping to address that to say, okay, once
Yeah,
I
it's a
onboard people,
yeah, yeah.
then
It's a
I
really
could define that.
interesting area. I was saying that, yeah, it is a very interesting area because now that, yeah, like you've already got, like most of it going, and I think it's definitely something, especially that, if you ask me, that the USP, definitely what stood out was the fact that, it brings out, data privacy at a very different light. Because the thing is that we've seen that there are so many, other ways where you can, look at creating events and, meetings. So what would be the USP for PGP? For me, I think the conversation around data privacy, having user ownership, would be definitely, maximizing a choice to actually build on, actually to engage with something like this. Because I think the role of, like I said, conversation and engagement is becoming so specific. And everybody, and especially for builders, right? There have been stories, I'm not going to name them, but there have been large tech engines who have, where people have been actually prompt engineering about an idea, and then later on, after a few months, you see that major large tech engine building something similar to what was actually being talked about, because the data is already gone. So I think in a space like this, and being your area of data privacy, I think small actions, of practice, make a large impact.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm trying to continue to build on these options, whether it be through Unlock or through even Zcash, to be able to transact in a way where you're registering for events, paying with Zcash, for example, where you can do that privately. That's kind of been one of my newer projects that I've worked on. And if anyone's interested in that, you can take a look at this other thing I've got. This is a demo, like an early beta for Zectix.com, Zectix.com, where you could, it's actually got two different options. One of them is an integration with Luma so that you can expose Luma events and then pay for those events with Zcash. And the other is using another tool called CypherPay. So it's a little bit off topic, but it's related to this issue of just trying to identify these problems with traditional Web 2 event registration, community building, giving people more privacy, giving them options that are more crypto native. This is something that's just important to me personally, that I really am passionate about, just because I've been doing so many meetings for so many years here in DC, that I just want to be able to, move this whole space forward to more of a Web3 native approach and a crypto native approach.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll continue working on that.
No, you must, because I think, let's see, even the drive that Unlock has, especially for the area of ticketing, like we see that in a lot of countries, there is the second layer of, let's say, ticketing, which is not recognized, or which is not certified, which happens all the time. So there are a lot of malpractices that also happen, especially with used to happen back in the day, but like with, let's say, movie tickets or music event tickets. So, and now, like we see that music is, or any conference, these are still large use cases where data, and we all know that once you've signed up for something, then your Gmail gets spammed with like other emails which you've not signed up for. So somebody's selling data, especially when you sign up for an event for from somewhere, and we
Yeah.
don't know, like, given the, I feel like I always say, after COVID, I feel anything is possible. So tomorrow, if data is sold and your name is plastered as some XYZ identity, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I think the level of paranoia is very high right now,
Yeah.
especially with the new capabilities that AI provides. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that means good things for Zcash, and I hope people are going to realize that they need to do things like we're talking about here, using very niche, or tools that
Yeah.
they build or that they customize based
Yeah.
on open source
Yeah.
tools that they know that they have confidence in and have control over, or use Zcash for payments and other things that, like, just give you the kind of control that you need to push back against this surveillance ecosystem that
Yeah.
is growing
Yeah.
much stronger every day.
Yeah.
It's good to fight back against that, because we're it's part of our individual freedom and identity and everything that we, I think, cherish as humans, to have some privacy about us, and
Yeah.
we got to really protect that.
Yeah. Okay. Also, looking at one other aspect of PGP, I would like to know, uh, when, the fact that you're creating this this ecosystem, which is kind of different, and I know we've touched upon it slightly, from already existing models. Do you fear that this replacement will take time, or do you think it is more of a culture of creating, like, default, still at times, I feel that we go to Gmail or we go to Google Calendar and we create things, right? So when do you think that things like PGP will just sit as a native behavioral action, that we need to create events, but through this ethos, and like, and yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still not as easy as it should be. Having to have your Ethereum wallet, or I'm using Base in particular, have that kind of capability in your wallet, and having that all set up is something that is difficult for some people. I know that there's tools like Privy that can hide a lot of that complexity for you. I actually, in the earliest versions of this, I used Privy, but again, I decided I really didn't want to give up that kind of control, especially over authentication to any third party provider, no matter what assertions they give me about protecting that data. I just didn't want to give that up, so I ended up moving away from that. But that does mean that I have a little more complexity with the sign up and the sign in with Ethereum process, and people have to bring their own wallet to the process. So yeah, I
would
think
that
that's yeah.
yeah, would that mean that your users would would not be very, they wouldn't be like early adopters, but more seasoned in understanding the language and also education and awareness, and that's fine.
Yeah.
When because there are different, I feel in web3 there are different grades of conversation and actions. Just in our previous you make us we were talking about how design needs to facilitate this seamless opportunity for whoever. But yet again, we can still argue that if you're looking at a certain kind of engagement and and let's say even policies, it comes with a certain ability to know you know
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think, and that was one of the reasons why I don't think I ever got to production on this, and that I did have some of my meeting attendees use this as kind of an early beta, but it was only the ones that were the most sophisticated that I knew had their own wallets, and it was only like a couple dozen at most out of a group of about 60 to 100 that that would normally attend these meetings. So yeah, I think you're right. I do think it's just going to get a lot easier, though. Where what I'm seeing personally with our project Zcash is that it was often viewed as difficult to use because we're an L1, we're kind of standalone. We have privacy features that are a little bit complicated. Some people don't really understand. It's a little bit of a barrier for people to make that step. But what we've done over the past year is we've added the ability to use DeFi for swaps with an integration with near intents. So now we're like I think the divisions and the among the crypto chains are kind of easier to navigate because you can use DeFi to kind of move from one chain to another based on whatever functionality or capability you're looking for. And I think that Zcash is a great place to just hold your native crypto and then move out through these swaps if they can be easy enough
yeah.
to Bitcoin or to Ethereum or whatever. So I think that's the trend I see happening is that um, a lot of the complexity is just going to be pushed down to like this infrastructure level where it just works. Um, we're not there yet. Clearly, this site that I built is not there yet, but and I think Privy is doing some good things on that front, like trying to just hide that complexity of logging in and authenticating and authorizing for access. But that's a pretty important thing that I don't want to give up in the tools that I use or I
Yeah.
build
No,
anyway.
and also if you like really look at the scope of who's going to be actually creating in an ecosystem, right? When we look at a organization, who's going to be the user or the profile or the persona creating that event, you know
Yeah, yeah,
um so I feel that that persona would definitely be more tuned to technology, or maybe not. Like, and when you had opened the your website, I was thinking that maybe there could be just like a very quick promo walkthrough of
yeah,
how it works, so just to familiarize the person. Because now the thing is that I'm sure when people were creating calendar invites, it was like, oh my god, this is something new. I think it would be the same with PGP, where it would become second to nature. And what I like about it is that it's very directional. There is one scope, is like, what, not one scope, but it's for creating meetings which can go into different different versions and memberships. So it's almost like using MetaMask, where you have a wallet and it
yeah.
is used for that scope. So I think it's fine. I mean, like, it doesn't need to be elaborate, doing multiple things and making it more complex. It could be just meetings with safety and growing on that with that, like a promo which encourages more people to use it, and then it just becomes a real real world case.
Yep, yep. So I think the foundation is almost there. It's not quite ready, but it's close. And my hope with doing this meeting is, if anyone's out there that has like similar needs, or sees the potential for building onto this, and making it a little bit better, cleaning up the UI issues, and simplifying it, I'm interested in collaborating on that, because I think this could be a really valuable platform for people to use, or something similar. So
Paul, I think you should just make a thread on the DAO and put it out there. You never know who's going to be interested, because a lot of the basic work is already done. So, yeah, I'm sure at Unlock there are, many other people with the same mentality and purpose who would like to, go further, and then you can see a place of, probably collaboration.
sure. Yep. I'll throw it out there. I mean, this is it's kind of a big project to undertake, though, I have to say. Even for me doing it, again, I spent months and on the
Yeah.
side doing
Yeah.
this. But it could be an important contribution.
Yeah, yeah. Like, there is this other I can't remember the name. They are basically like an open source Web3, chat GPT, and they also have their own token. Can't remember the
Thinking of
name.
Venice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great tool. It has one purpose, and even maybe with PGP, maybe you could also, launch, not right now, because, launching
Yeah.
tokens, has to have meaning nowadays. It can't, it's not like back in the
Oh,
day
that's
that
a
you
very
just,
serious undertaking, for
yeah,
sure.
exactly. But I think, yeah, I mean,
No,
but
I've
yeah, I
I've
mean,
considered that, and I'm a big fan of Venice AI. By the way, I use it all the time. I love that whole ecosystem they have.
yeah, I thought it was quite an interesting way of, just using AI. And then when I heard it was decentralized, that all, made things more, easier to use. Yeah, because we need options. I think the way that data is being, just, I think, in my case, I feel it's just floating around here and there. It needs to have some grounding, or else it'll
Yeah.
always be in the clouds, and you don't know who's going to get it. uh,
That's right. Well, on this topic, while I'm not doing my monthly meetings right now, there is another meeting that I do plan to do later this year. This will be the third one coming up this year. It's an annual summit, the DC Privacy Summit. So I can just do a little pitch on that. So
yeah.
if you want to attend in person, or you can see the live stream. It'll be happen in October. I think we're looking at October 21st and 22nd. The details will be published here shortly, but dcprivacysummit.org. So this is actually a collaboration with another team, Project Glitch. It's projectglitch.xyz. They're journalists. So we take these ideas of the PGP community, and then we just do like a deep dive 1-day event on privacy, security, and digital identity. So it's all kind of related.
Yeah. Yeah, we do also at Unlock have this section called Share Your Event. So yeah, you should put it there. We're always looking at supporting our community in any way we can. Yeah, and yeah, okay. On our last few thoughts, how do you think Web3 is going to shape your thinking and also the thinking of others in the future?
Well, I love the idea of using decentralized infrastructure and having more ownership of and control of all the data. I think, as all we've been talking about through this whole conversation. Well, I think that there's major issues with transparency for some of these applications right now, and there's a lot of really cool projects that are working on bringing privacy to Ethereum and other chains, that you can have the same kind of programmability but not have all the data available for the world to see. So I think and that's again, one of these reasons why I've kind of held back on going to production and pushing this out hard, is because just the fact that people are linking their addresses to these NFTs, and you can see someone's NFT collection out there. Maybe they don't want you to see that, right? It'd be nice to have privacy solutions around that.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that as we discussed earlier, I think that, or I hope that, like all of this infrastructure that I'm using and trying to build on just becomes more normal, so that it's a lot easier and not such a barrier for people to access having your own wallet, for example, but also having more privacy and having options to not have some of this data available in a transparent way on chain.
Yeah. No, and I think that the transparency, and I know there is a lot of conversation, especially last year, and a lot of the conferences that, privacy was, how do we create it? How does it actually work for the trustless web that, floated around a lot? And yeah, and the scope of, I feel that, metadata is always gold, you know, but we
Mm-hmm.
have to use it with responsibility in whatever way we shape it or use it. um, yeah. So any other last thoughts that you would like to add?
I've covered a ton. I just want to thank this community, the Unlock community, for doing all the work you've done to build all those contracts out there, and to just create that base functionality, and also to run all the infrastructure that you do for events. I think that's really so cool, and give people other options to hold events and do subscriptions and other things, ticketing in Web3. So I'm a fan. I will hopefully pick this back up, and if there's collaborators out there, I'm happy to collaborate as well on these topics we've discussed. So just keep up the good
Amazing.
work.
Amazing. Okay, thank you, Paul. It was great having you on You Make Us, and yeah, keep us posted.
All right, thanks a lot. Take care.
Okay.